Welcome to the Dr. Carolyn Coker-Ross Show, awakening your full potential and expanding your understanding of how to live fully and joyfully by making conscious choices that promote and maintain vitality in all areas of your life. Now here's your host, Dr. Carolyn Coker-Ross. Please be sure to listen to this episode in an environment that is safe. Do not listen to this recording while driving a car or operating any kind of machinery.
Welcome to the Dr. Carolyn Coker-Ross Show. Today, my special guest is Stephanie Dodier, and I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about herself and her own journey to healing from food and body image issues, and we'll get started. I have a lot of great questions for you, Stephanie, today. Can you just talk a little bit about your journey and how that led you to Beyond the Food and all the work that you're doing now?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast and meeting your audience. The starting point is 12 years old when I was brought to Weight Watcher at 12 to lose weight. And when I dial back and look back at that time in my life, I had begun my journey of emotional eating. My family had moved from one end of town to the other in this new area, no kids around, just like no house, just us in that new area. Wow. And that got me to be very lonely. And as a way of distracting myself, I started cooking cookies and cakes, and I started to use food to keep myself busy. Yeah. And as with anything, I gained weight, and being in an abnormal body, being in this body that was bigger, out of love for me, my mother, my family decided that it was best for me to lose weight.
So many families do that out of love.
Yes, it's weight stigma, right? When you look at the reason why people do that is my mother thought because she had body image issue, that the best way was for me to lose weight and never have to have the pain that she had because of her body. And that kickstarted a 25-year journey in dieting. I had a career in dieting. I've done them all: low calorie, high calorie, exercise. 25 years later, at 37, at the peak of my career in a corporate world, I was on stage speaking and I literally collapsed. My body couldn't take it anymore. Yeah. Combination of 25 years of deprivation, starvation, gaining, losing, and the stress of the work. And I ended up in hospital at 37, being diagnosed with 5 chronic conditions. Wow. And being served with what is normal, 5 prescription for high blood pressure and cholesterol and anxiety and depression and so forth. I have a background in medical study, and I knew what those prescriptions were, and I knew the side effect and the consequence of this. And I made a decision that day. I still remember walking down the hallway from the doctor's office and crumbling the prescription and saying, you know what, there's got to be another solution to this. Mm-hmm. And that propelled me into the world of natural health. And in seeking to heal myself, I discovered a passion, and I quit my job and went back to school. And here I am today helping other women going through that same journey.
And you're a certified nutritionist, is that?
Yes. So holistic nutrition training. And then from there, a whole bunch of other training that led me to see the body and food beyond just calories and macro and input into the body, but also input emotionally, spiritually, and mentally.
Yeah, which is what we have connected on. And
yes.
I love the title of the work that you do, which is Beyond the Food, because it isn't about the food.
Well, we think it is, right? So I thought it was for 25 years. For 25 years, I didn't realize that it could be anything else. And then when I went into healing myself, I discovered that it could be something else. And there could be another reason why I was eating beyond nourishment, which honestly, I never connected for 25 years, because that's not how we're thought about food. And even when we need to lose weight, diet culture never talks about that aspect of it, right?
Yeah, right. And it keeps people kind of stuck in the vicious cycle of thinking, all I have to do is lose weight, and then my blood pressure will be better. Then my heart disease will be better if I can only just lose weight. And I think it's a very valid question to ask yourself, is weight really the cause of your health problems? So what did you discover when you started that journey and started to realize it wasn't about the food, but you still had these health problems?
Yeah, well, so there's been an evolution.
Okay.
So when I crumbled that prescription and went out to the world and said, is there another solution? I went through like acupuncture, hypnotherapy, and then I went into the world of naturopathic medicine, which then still focused on food as medicine, right? And that propelled me into the world of clinical nutrition, which believed that the solution to our health problem was in food. And again, never looking beyond the food, always focus on a certain ratio of macros and supplement to offset the nutrient that I was depleting. That shifted my thinking of saying, it's not about just the calorie, there's more to it.
Okay, so when you say macros, so it's like you eat this percentage of protein and this percentage of carbohydrates and so
paleo, keto, all that stuff. And then when you go and study the world of actual nutrition, you start discovering that there's all kinds of dietary protocol out there, right? That we think of the GAPS diet, that we think of the pure ketogenic diet, that are known to have benefit health effect.
Yeah,
problem.
Dashes for high blood pressure, for example.
We know it works.
Yeah.
But it should only be temporary while we work on the root issue. And that's the missing component, that what is now known as the wellness diet, right? So we have the typical diet culture that says control food and control exercise to lose weight. Now we're evolving diet culture to what it's called wellness diet that says, well, we know it's not about the quantity of food, it's about quality. And I got trapped into this for 3 years of obsessing about quality, ratio of macro, detoxes, supplement,
eating clean,
all of that stuff, right?
That's a new term for that now. It's called Healthism. People
same term.
Lose weight to be healthy. And so the focus is still on losing weight, but
bingo.
It's by eating clean and all those other things.
So I went from 25 years of pure dieting, like calorie in, calorie out, exercising, to healthism, fixing my body so that I can release the unhealthy weight.
Yeah.
Right? That's the new trend, right? Releasing the unhealthy weight. The problem with that, which I didn't know up to about 5 years ago, is that the body has accumulated a lot of stress from losing and gaining and losing and gaining and losing and gaining.
Because that yo-yo dieting is super stressful. It's very stressful.
And that's called set point, right? So what happens is I was presented with a book called Health at Every Size, right? From Dr. Linda Bacon. And I remember the first time I was presented with that, I was at the core. Back then, I was one of those early adopter of the keto diet, the ketogenic diet. That triggered in me binge eating behavior. And I was at the core of that. And one of my friends sent me that book. And I read the first chapter, closed it, and I denied it completely. I thought she was crazy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? Because when you're triggered by something, it means you have to learn. And I was refusing to learn, right? It took a second and a third time for somebody to give me that book and read it and to finally understand that there was side effect in my body that was called set point, and that my seeking to like get into a thin body perhaps will never happen. It may happen, it may not, but that's not important, right? And that's when I started to work on body image for my own journey.
You were trapped by the numbers, whether it was a size 10 or the number on the scale or the number of your blood pressure and so on and so forth.
But here's the funny thing that happened. So as I started to embrace health at every size and research, like satisfy my intellectual brain on is it true or not, and I started to let go of keto and the food rules and the detoxes and all of that, my body got better.
When you say your body got better, what do you mean exactly?
So I'm a professional health professional. So one of the things that I do from time to time, not as much anymore, but back then I would do hormone testing, right? Okay. So I had for the last 5 years a cortisol pattern, right? So for people to know, cortisol is the stress hormone that was completely out of norm. Like I would have either very high cortisol or abruptly low cortisol, which is known as HPA dysregulation, or a common term people may have heard is adrenal fatigue, which is not a condition in itself, but I was dysregulated because I was too stressed, right? My body was all over the place. Mm-hmm. As I started to let go of the food rules, as I started to release the hardcore effort of me regulating and getting my body healthy, my cortisol pattern started to become normal.
Wow.
I started to have 8 hours sleep night, no longer waking up at like 2 a.m. wide awake.
Wow.
And being able to sleep past 5 a.m, which I hadn't been able to do in years, because when my cortisol started in my body was so dysregulated that it was like shooting cortisol, and I would wake up at 5 with like an anxiety attack.
Yeah. Mind racing, heart racing. I was just talking to someone about that today. The same kind of scenario you had. They were given a couple of diagnoses, didn't understand the full ramifications, but went into fear about it. Well, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And it was waking them up at night and keeping them up.
Yeah, so that's how my body got better. The other thing that happened is I was on a parallel journey of mindfulness. And when you have a lot of anxiety, when your stress system is like dysregulated, it's extremely hard for you to go in meditation, right? And it's biologically explainable and it's spiritually explainable, because you don't want to go to what the real issue is because you're not equipped to deal with it. So as I started the journey of releasing all those healthism tactic, I started to be able to meditate deeply for the first time in my life, which I had never been able before.
Isn't it amazing how all those things are so connected? We don't think that a journey to quote unquote lose weight, or even when you call it to get healthy, would take you to this place where suddenly you're able to meditate and you're able to sleep through the night, and you realize how stressful your life has been centered around dieting, even healthy dieting.
Well, and it's centered when you really peel back all the layers and you do the work, quote, the work, right? As it needs to be done, like on 4 planes of the human being, mental, spiritual, emotion, and physical, you discover that it's not about dieting, right? The root feeling that I was chasing was being enough.
Yes, exactly.
That's what got reprogrammed for me at the age of probably around between 10 and 12, when I started being bullied at school, when my parents started to make comments about my body. And then finally, when I landed at Weight Watcher at 12, that you're broken, we need to fix you, at an age where your subconscious mind is being programmed, got embedded deeply in my brain.
We've talked about this before, but that's what I see so much in the people that I work with. It would either be I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy, or no one will love me if fill in the blank. And these beliefs then become so unconscious that you don't remember that this happened until you go back. And then it's really a shock to the system. For me, it's a shock to think about having children and knowing what a 12-year-old little girl is like and how fragile we were at 12, and to have something so harsh put on them in that way.
But at the same time, and this is where we can bring the conversation to a higher level, society doesn't teach these things to the average people. Like the way we have our society built and the education system that we have, or even in most cases, the religious aspect of our life is not centered around teaching that to us as human, anyway, in the first world. So my parents were never taught that a 12-year-old little girl is fragile.
Yeah, nobody gives parenting classes. We have to take a big test to drive, but we don't have to take a test to have kids. And so everybody's just doing the best they can. So there's no blame to be placed. Like you said, we want to take it to the higher level. But let me shift a little bit and talk about, you're talking about education. And I've just had a couple of things told to me in recent days about the medical profession, and I've found myself feeling like I need to apologize for my medical colleagues who are saying these things. But one woman said that she was having a ultrasound or some kind of x-ray, and the doctor said to her, just look, there's a thin woman waiting to get out of you. In other words, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone else went to a very famous medical clinic here, and she had good cholesterol. All of her metabolic factors were normal. Her blood pressure was normal, all of that. But the doctor said, well, we think you should have gastric bypass. And she said, but I thought you had to be very obese to do that. And he said, no, we've changed the measures now, and now we're doing it in people who aren't as heavy. And it's just like, that made me gasp, knowing that patients have died from that surgery, that they've had extreme complications, that there's a huge failure rate. So it's just so frustrating.
Think about this for a minute. Like, we will be looking at this 100 years from now and think,
barbaric.
What were we thinking? It's like 100 years ago, we used to do electric shock therapy on people with mental illness.
Well, we still do that, Stephanie.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
I didn't think we would.
But 100 years ago, we used to use leeches.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry to inform you that doctors are still doing ECT. That's the thing.
But it used to be done to everyone. But my point is, we'll be looking back at that and saying, like, how crazy were we to think
cut someone's stomach in half and think that that's okay?
Yeah, it's barbaric. So I saw a meme on Instagram today saying that people that are having liposuction, like, think of the concept of liposuction. We go in with a device, we suck the fat out of people.
Yeah.
And then from a pure aesthetic point of view, yet people are as sick as they were before. So if people going in with liposuction, it's not going to drop their blood pressure. It's not going to help their cholesterol level. Yet we prescribe to another group of people to go on a diet to lose fat in hope that it's going to drop their blood pressure and help their cholesterol. Yet we have proven through liposuction that it doesn't work.
It does not work. That's the hard truth. But the other truth, the fake news, is so deeply embedded in our culture that I face it every day, and it's really difficult to overcome because people it's like rocking their world to tell them that weight is not the solution to your problem. So that makes me wonder then, from a feminism point of view, I almost feel, and I've never had this mindset before, but seeing and hearing what I've been seeing and hearing makes me look at how women are treated in our society, and if this is just another way to keep women from achieving all the things they could achieve, from being happy, from being powerful, etc.
Well, let's unpack that question and let's come back to, so we talk about it from a medical perspective, and that's both gendered. But I want to move from there and dial back to the day or the time when diet were created. Like, the word diet was created in 1880s. So pretty much assuming from that, before that people, the concept of dieting did exist, or we didn't have any trace of it because there was no word called diet. 1880s is when diet were created, and it was a low-carb diet, the very first one to come out. And it was mainly about removing white sugar out of people's diet, and mainly out of the rich population class, because people that were average classes didn't have the money to eat food that were high in calorie, right? They were just on survival mode, because that's how the classes were in society. And then came the evolution, or the attempt anyway, from women to evolve and get power of equality in society. And that came in through the movement of the right to vote, right? The suffragette movement. And the society into which we live in, which, by the way, is called patriarchy, right? Patriarchal society, which is a society dominated by men. Men were in power up to the mid-1950s. Before that, it was a society of men, and women were
Mother.
considered less.
Yeah, in the kitchen, having babies, etc. Yeah.
And then we came out, the small group suffragette comes out and wants the right to vote. We get the right to vote, and then the war happened at the same time, and then we start invading the workforce. And now not only do we have the vote, but we have money, we have financial power, and then the men in society, the patriarchal society, feels threatened by women no longer being in their spot where they can control them. And that's when diet culture started to rise. Slowly and gradually, diet culture started to rise, but men came back from the war, women went back home, and there was a shift in society that was called the feminine mystique, right? Around the 40s, right? You had to look pretty and put your makeup on and take care of your husband. And then a whole society financial came in which the home appliances were created and how to decorate your house. And a lot of money were placed on being this perfect feminine wife, right? The feminine mystique. And then we rised up again and wanted to go back to work. So there's this whole segment of the economy that no longer is sustained by women being at home. Yeah. And then the shift gradually happened in which now it was about being beautiful. That's called the beauty myth if you read on feminism. So now we started, but patriarchy, society, leader, economy started to focus on women wanting and needing to be beautiful. And that's the 70s and the 80s. I remember my mom, she wouldn't leave the house without her makeup. Yeah. Up to this day today, if somebody comes in the house and she doesn't have her makeup on, she will literally run to the bathroom. But that was ingrained into her in the 80s and the 70s. Yeah. Right? I didn't live through that. I'm in the other generation where I never wear makeup, right? You can count the days I wear makeup in a year. But what it created is this thin ideal. Not only did you need it to look good and buy makeup and buy clothes, you needed to be thin, and that created the weight loss industry. Yeah. So there's a sharp increase in the weight loss industry around the 80s, which is now today a $67 billion industry.
Absolutely. And that evolution also applied to women of color who were distinguished from white upper class women because their bodies were different. And so that became a kind of a marker for if you were white upper middle class, you had to be thin or else you were considered lower class. So that's part of it too. So what do you do with all this information though? I mean, we've talked about your own personal journey and now looking at kind of the social factors here that affect women. And for me, I'm very much into like encouraging women to be as powerful as they can be and recognize how much time and energy we put into having to look good, having to be thin, being on diets. I mean, it's so much time and energy in a person's life. It's almost impossible to find time to achieve anything. But what do you do with this?
For me, this information is part of my empowerment process. Because not wanting to participate in the thin ideal body journey is a choice, which 25 years, I didn't know I had a choice.
That's so important. Say that again. That's so important.
Like it's a choice to participate in diet culture in the thin ideal. And that's what this information about feminism, about how diet culture function created and gave me. It's like, holy S, I have a choice. This whole system was created so I am subdued, so I'm disempowered. So I had a career in the corporate world. And if you were to ask people who work with me, the descriptive of my career was glass breaking. Like the ceiling of women, I broke every step of the way in my company.
Wow.
Yet, for that same amount of time, I was chasing being in a thinner body and suffering in my personal life because I was buying into a system that wanted to take the power away from me. Mm-hmm. What could I have achieved in my career if I wasn't chasing this thin ideal.
Exactly.
So to me, Carolyn, to answer your question, this information is fueling my empowerment to be in a position of choice instead of being in a state of victimhood. Yeah. And saying I have no choice.
And living in a state of fear that if you don't lose weight, you can't not be healthy.
I cannot be happy.
And you cannot be happy even more. I mean, I think I interviewed Linda Bacon on my first podcast in 2010. And so now here we are almost a decade later, and we still have to have this conversation with so many people.
And I believe we will need to have this conversation for another 50 years. Like if you look back on the evolution, in particular in the context of feminism, it took us probably 50 years from the late 1910s, early 1920s to the 70s to be comfortable as a society with women being able to vote and have political power.
Yeah, that's true. Things changed.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
And I was reading The Beauty Myth, the book that I'm referring to, and the book was written in the early 1990s. And she was quoting incident that was happening around her of women being sexually harassed at work. That is in the early 1990s.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness.
And I'm reading this, I'm like, that's not my generation, right? That's my mom's generation. I didn't live through this. Like, even to fathom having somebody sexually harass me at work, it was unacceptable by the point where when I got into the workforce. But it took 30 to 40 years to get to that place.
Well, we also just recently, in the last couple of years, have seen the Me Too movement.
Exactly.
Sexual harassment is still occurring in the workplace. It isn't over. It's not gone. Yeah.
So for us to move to a place where diet culture, where body shaming, thin ideal doesn't exist, I believe we have 50 years of work. We're just starting right now.
Yeah. Well, you're young enough to live through those next 50 years. I'm not sure I want to at this point.
But I'm considered an outcast right now for the way I think and the way I practice and the way I do things. I'm an outcast. I'm not even considered like a marginal person because it's so minimal, this body acceptance movement, this health at every size movement, that people can't even comprehend it. So we have a lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do. Well, I love talking to you, as you know, all the time. Can you give us a wrap up with what you feel good about what you've accomplished on your journey for yourself, your personal journey, and where you still feel that there's room to grow?
For me, probably my most achievement or my highest achievement is gaining weight and being able to accept my body as is. It's gaining weight personally, but it's also gaining weight in the context of a public figure, in the context of a professional. That's a whole other layer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and being able to stand in front of a room of colleagues, of other professional in an abnormal, quote, body, and being in the space of confidence and being able to do my work.
Because people do judge you by how you look, and then it's like, well, what can she tell us about food and body image? Because she's not thin. You know?
Exactly. Or about health. I think the biggest subject is health. Like, how can you talk about health? So for me is because as a teacher, you're not perfect. You're a couple steps ahead of your student, right? Well, that's what enables you to teach, right? Is to be a couple steps ahead and being able to share your experience. So my biggest achievement professionally is being able to now share my story and share my journey to inspire other women of what is possible for them. And I'm able to touch women that are where I was. Would I be in a smaller body? Would I be able to impact those women? I don't know, right? Because I am not relatable to those women where I was. So to me, it's a gift of being in a larger body and being educated around the topic of health, around the topic of mindset and body image, and to be able to formulate my message and being able to reach women's heart.
Oh, that's beautiful. I feel the same way. For me, it's about health as well, and being able to speak as a doctor to the truth, to what the facts actually show that medicine often ignores. There's so many facts in medicine that people overlook or they don't want to pay attention to. They want to just keep doing things the same old way. But I think the facts are starting to pile up in our favor. The research is beginning to.
So let me ask you this. I have my own opinion on this question, but what do you think is holding back the medical core from accepting the facts that health is something we can strive in at any size?
You could ask that about so many things in medicine. For example, the coronary artery bypass surgery is still being done despite the fact that the research does not show it's successful in preventing future episodes of heart problems. And despite the fact that Dean Ornish has proven that changing your lifestyle can alter all of those facts. He has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, I'm not a fan of being a vegan. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me. But he has shown, by showing that veganism, the most extreme way of eating, definitely turns back heart disease, that maybe changing lifestyle in a more moderate fashion could do the same. That's his approach. But so I don't know. It could be money. There's always that. But I think doctors have been so ingrained with, you've got to get them to lose weight. You've got to get them to lose weight. You've got to get them to lose weight. To the point that we've had drugs come out that have killed people. The fen-phen debacle. I was in practice at that time, and it was horrific to see that so many women lost their lives trying to get thin. And the same thing with gastric bypass. Perhaps there's some value there. I don't see it personally. I can't really recommend it to people, but it has over 30% failure rate. So how could that ever be a good thing? I don't know. So I'm not sure what is the cause of this, but the educational process is certainly a huge part of it, because it does just hammer doctors with, you're not doing your job if your patients aren't losing weight. And they're not really talking much about the studies that show that you don't have to lose weight to be healthy or happy. So it's a problem. But medicine is one of the slowest changing professions. They say it's over 17 years for any medical practice to change, any procedure or anything to change. Over 17.
I can't comment on the traditional medical world, which you just did, but I can comment on the natural health industry. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that we have the same issue currently as the traditional medical world is representing around weight and needing to lose weight, right? So most naturopathic doctor or functional medicine doctor will tell you got to lose weight.
Exactly.
But I'm inside this industry, and I can tell you that the driving motivation behind that, like the primary motivation, is unfortunately financial.
Well,
right?
In my heart of hearts, I know that to be true. I hate to think that it is, but I think you're absolutely right. $67 billion says it all. And that's the weight loss industry. And that's women's hard-earned dollars that they're not able to help their kids in college or whatever, because they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to be thin.
So when I look at my industry, it's the books that the doctor writes, a natural doctor will write on weight loss, is the supplement they prescribe, and it's the tests. And that's what's holding us back, even in the natural world, from moving forward with the evidence that weight is not the centric issue. Because if we remove that, then we remove a huge portion of our revenue.
Exactly. Well, that's a really sad note to leave things on. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Can we run an upbeat?
Well, it's funny because I do business coaching as well, right? And I was preparing a document for the people to whom I work with in the industry, and I was looking at Google Trend. So for those of you who may know, you can go on Google and see the trend of the search for a certain period of years. And I did a search on intuitive eating, right? Which is a model of eating that I teach in my practice. And when I looked at the last 5 years, the search trend had doubled. Like literally, it's on the peak of an incline. And it did the same thing for health at every size and body positivity. And it's showing the same trend.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I believe that that's what's in front of us.
Yeah. So we still have our work cut out for us.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being on the show. It's great.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
You have been listening to the Dr. Carolyn Coker-Ross Show. Please visit CarolynRossMD.com. That's CarolynRossMD.com to access podcasts, show archives, and more about Dr. Ross and her services.